what would Wrexham's expectations for next season be? And where do you think they will finish in the Championship next season? This is really, really interesting because, so Wrexham come up with Birmingham and Charlton. And we have a fair idea on Birmingham, what they're going to do and how it's going to work. We probably have a fair idea on Charlton, what they're going to do and how it's going to work. And, you know, probably Birmingham are going to be in this part of the table and Charlton are going to be in that part of the table. Wrexham are really fascinating because they could really be anywhere, couldn't they? And there's a lot of kind of facets to it in respects of how they've found their way. I mean, the first thing I'd say is some people do pour scorn on us using the term momentum. I believe in momentum in football. I think if a team has a winning record over 1-2 years, I do think that's a thing in terms of mentality, and it can be a marginal gain. And let's be very frank about this. Wrexham's winning record is not over 1-2 seasons. It's over many more than that. Look at this. Second National League, first National League, second League 2, second League 1. That's basically, they've been in the top 2 of the division they've been in for 4 straight seasons. So, I don't know, quick multiplication, 160, 170 games of football or whatever it is, and you're winning the vast majority of those over 4 years. That is a thing that does kind of soak into the, the kind of club, doesn't it? Now, everyone's telling me it's a big jump from League One to Championship, particularly for Wrexham. And I think it's a little bit because of the way they played, who their manager is, the setup and perhaps the age of the team, and whether there might have to be some kind of pivot. Because what you would ideally like to do when you get promoted is do the same thing, hope some of your players step up, and then maybe you attract some better players to do the same thing that you were doing at a higher level. You don't really want to be tearing it up and making mass changes, do you? And it was just, I mean, let me just try and bring up some sort of stats and whatnot here. I mean, the first thing that pops up on the Wrexham stats for last season that's good news is they've got an 18-goal striker there in Sam Smith. So a lot of people simplify the game to have you got a goal scorer. And Sam Parkin he talked about it on the Championship Check-In podcast, he did the game against Charlton, was it, where they got promoted, and was very impressed with Sam Smith, who scored 1, maybe 2 in that game. I can't quite remember. Now, what is really fascinating is when you go into the team stats and how the attacking stats and the defensive stats are mismatched in the idea that Wrexham are a functionally better defensive, pragmatic side than they are a goal-scoring machine. They finished second in the table and got tons of points, so read into it what it is. But we're talking here about how does that pass and transmit through from Tier 3 of English football to Tier 2 of English football. And, I mean, look at that. They're right up with Birmingham defensively. 0.7 conceded, it says on FootMob. They're tied in that one. It says 24 clean sheets here to Wrexham and 22 to Birmingham. So, defensively, just very, very good. But then you start to get into the kind of attacking metrics. Wrexham 9th for goals per game, 13th for expected goals, 14th for shots on target. And you get into the possession stuff as well. 14th for accurate passes completed. Look, 3rd for accurate long passes as well. So there's a bit of a sense of, can you recruit the quality of player to play in that way in the Championship and for it to be successful? Because all I would say is, I mean, we can look at the Championship at large in a minute. Have we had a team that's been kind of defensive and pragmatic and been promoted? I think back to Warnock's Cardiff in 17-18. To be fair, Nuno's Wolves were quite defensive, but come on, they had their central midfielder, I can't remember his name, Ruben Neves, Willy Bolly, Diogo Jota. They had some class players, and it was more a kind of seen as a European style than just a defensive Phil Parkinson style, frankly. But I'm trying to think. Someone let me know in the comments. I think there's a bit of revisionist history about Steve Cooper and Forest that they were particularly defensive. I don't think they were. I think they were very counter-attacky. People will say that Burnley this season were a defensive team, but I don't know. Just because you don't concede many goals, and I'll admit I watched a lot more of Burnley than I did in the Championship, than I did of Wrexham in League One, and Burnley very much kept the ball and tried to dominate the game. So I think the difference there maybe between Burnley this season and Wrexham last season is where Wrexham were in terms of possession, and did they want the ball, or were they okay to sit off and do what they needed to and be a pragmatic defensive side? I'm just not sure there's been too many of them be successful in the Championship in recent times. So by the way, you can do what you were doing and do it with better players. And look, it's not going to be a problem recruiting players. Players are going to want to go and play for Wrexham. We all know that because of the setup there and, the strategy they've kind of used thus far under Ryan and Rob. Let's be fair, you can completely revolutionise it and change everything. Or I suppose the middle ground is you can tweak gradually and, move towards maybe a slightly different style that might be a bit more Championship conducive. But I'm not ruling out that the Phil Parkinson style could just work for Wrexham, and they could be really good at home and people could really struggle to score past them, and they've got the momentum, and up, and away they go. Let me just address this age thing, because I think there's this idea. We'll try and give you some actual facts here. What was the game that got promoted? So Wrexham 3, Charlton 0. Let me just bring that up. Line up age. Okay. 23, 22, 30, 24, 24. So across the back, they're fairly young, actually, there with Cleworth, Brunt, Longman, and Okonkwo in goal. Then 27, 33, 28, 36, 35, 27. So, I don't know. Average age of 28.6. I know we're talking about extremes here. I don't know what the average age for Sunderland getting promoted was, but that was the sort of polar opposite, wasn't it? So I do think they're going to need to maybe adjust slightly for age in that profile, and maybe a slightly different profile of player in terms of being able to look after the ball a little bit more in the Championship, which, I don't know, kind of takes you to Phil Parkinson then, who has been around and about for many, many years. He's got promotions to his name. Has Parkinson got a Championship promotion? Did Parkinson get promoted with Hull? I can't quite remember whether he's got one. I think he might have like a League One. Is there one here? I'm not seeing a career. Does it give me the honours here? Bradford, Bolton, Sunderland, Wrexham. Well, there you go. He didn't get promoted with Hull. I'm sure Phil Parkinson managed Hull. Did he? Maybe Footmob doesn't even go back that far. But look, I think that's been one of the interesting things, that it's been Phil Parkinson for Hollywood Wrexham, where many might have thought that they'd want to try and do something hipstery and fashionable and big named and sexier or whatever than Phil Parkinson. But he's been their guy, hasn't he? And there's a lot to be said for continuity. There's a lot to be said for experience, isn't there? So I don't know. I'm really, really interested to see how this plays out. My hunch would be that they'll try and keep doing what they have been doing, and they'll try and be quite aggressive in the transfer market, and we'll see some big movers in August. And we've often made the comparison here on this channel to Mel Morris's Derby County, where he would constantly just be throwing in really experienced players for £3 to £5 million. I don't know. They'd get Jack Marriott and Martin Waghorn and Joe Ledley and Andre Wisdom, and all these people would just be ready to go, and they'd pay good money and good salaries for them. And obviously in the PSR days, nobody's really been able to do that. And let's be honest as well, in the kind of PSR landscape, Derby were very much a canary in the coal mine for, right, you're not going to be able to do it this way anymore in terms of spend and buy your guarantees, which is what Wrexham have done in their journey through League Two and League One. Let's finish this off, this long-winded answer on Wrexham here. Where do you think they will finish in the Championship next season? I think they'll do all right. I mean, obviously, I'm now infamously clipped in the Wrexham documentary on Disney saying I don't think they'll make the top 6 in League One, and they went ahead and made the top 2. I should probably double down now, being it's an even higher league, and say, well, it's going to be hard for them to get in the top 6 again. But there is lots of winning momentum there. They will. They will recruit aggressively. There is continuity there, and whether it means anything, they're a big story, whatever they do, aren't they? So there's things that could go in their favour. I will sort of restate that I think out of the 3 promoted League One teams, there's the most dynamic range, I think, for where it could be. They could finish in the playoffs. They could go down. They could be right in the middle. They could be anywhere from about 18 different positions, couldn't they? But I think they'll be all right. And, I don't think, put it this way, I don't think they're going to be in the 3rd and 4th tier of English football anytime soon. I think they're going to be around and about in the Championship. And we all know in the Championship, you are one good season away from getting in the playoffs. And you are 3 games away from the Premier League if you do that. So whatever it is, it's exciting times for Wrexham. I've probably fudged the answer around lots of detail there, but it's a very, very interesting setup. And there could be a lot of change. There could be absolutely no change whatsoever. And they'll just keep doing what they've been doing. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, especially fans of rival teams, Wrexham fans. How do you see it playing out? Will their current strategy that they've been using work, or are we going to see some evolution or complete bloody revolution over in Wales? Let me know your thoughts.